Okay, we're ready? Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. It is Thursday, April 17th, 2025, 11:30, and we're here to discuss the tax exemption process with Silver Valley Metals Corp. And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Dose since he's kind of the liaison of this.
I'm going to say that the liaison has felt overwhelmed and has decided the best thing to do is get all the right folks in the room to ask questions and let Taylor and Grant present what it is that they're trying to accomplish here. And then we can all ask questions. This is not a decision-making meeting. This is just an information-gathering meeting because we still have to schedule a final hearing. So I'm going to turn it over to Taylor and Grant.
Great.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, I can go first and do just some quick introductions so you know who we are and why we're taking up some of your time here. Grant Cooper, Ernst & Young. I'm a tax attorney by trade. I used to be in San Francisco before joining the firm over here in the UK, and I led our Idaho State economic development practice. So we worked really closely with the folks at Boise, and when we would have clients in different sectors, be that agriculture or technology, we would work with them around procuring the right sites. It usually, was a comparative study between, Eastern Washington, Oregon, kind of the tri-state area, and we would help them with site selection projects. So looking forward to talking about this project really quickly, and I'll let Taylor introduce yourself if you haven't already.
Yeah, I think I introduced myself to everyone, but my name's Taylor Noonan, and I've worked with Grant for the past 7 years now in various credits and incentives. We do have a lot of experience in Idaho specifically. Yeah. So, Grant, do you want to go through the timeline and?
Yeah. Well, so I guess the first thing I'll start with is everyone has had a chance to, I hope, look at the application that we submitted back in November of 24. It's lengthy. We don't have all the documents there because we included things such as financials, articles of incorporation, etc. But we're really trying to help build the case and help build the county's understanding of what the project is, and probably equally as important what it's not. We've done this in other counties in the state, so we tried to attach some sample materials as well that you can leverage from other counties that have used this on different projects that we've been a part of. Obviously, there's a lot more examples out there, and you're free to use those examples as well. But really, I think the approach that Taylor and I wanted to have here was, build the timeline, explain the underlying law which allows the county to do this. And so if it's more helpful to start with, the project itself, obviously everyone in the room probably knows it very well. There's no secrets in a community like yours, and this company moving back in and fixing to be the largest employer in the area here in the near term. It's a big deal. So happy to talk about the project itself, or to dive into the qualifying law, wherever you'd like to start there.
I think it'd help to hear a summary of the project, if we could.
I would agree, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, absolutely. So the company assumed control of the mine facility back in 2020. I'm just going to hit the highlights here. We go into more details, and happy to respond to any of the details there in the application. But to date, we'll call it between 2020 and as we're sitting here today, approximately $100 million worth of investment. The way the project has worked is, it goes through financing cycles. There's absolutely zero revenue being created or drawn at this point in time. Again, the mine needs to get into production before any kind of revenues can be harvested. Taylor and I have been on this project for probably about a year, and we've had a chance to know the company. We've been pursuing several other federal programs as sources of financing for this project. And so the state piece is something that we've come back to, and the local piece is something we've come back to, time and time again, as really showing a partnership and a willingness to have this in your backyard and kind of a shared support system. So again, $100 million have been invested to date. I would say that there are millions left to be spent to bring this operational. There are a number of things that I would update in the application as we submitted it in November. One being the timeline for production and opening. That has slipped to the back end of this year or the beginning of 2026. Currently, right now, we're working with the company to secure additional financing. We believe a deal is going to close on that soon. All of this is public record. It's a publicly traded company, so that shouldn't come as a surprise. Important things that communities such as yourself usually ask me in these are, well, what about the jobs? What are we talking about here? What could this project be? Where do we sit today? So today there's approximately 30 full-time employees. You probably know some of them, and there are approximately and there are approximately 30 construction jobs, full-time construction jobs that are working in the facility at any given day. Now, you probably noticed this is down from other cycles in the development process. That's due in large part to the financing gap that we have at this point in time at the facility. I'm not worried about it. I don't think that anyone in this room should be worried about it. I think if you talk to anybody at the company, they're not worried about it. It's just something that happens when you're investing this much capital into a project and not pulling out any revenue. But again, opening production scheduled for the end of this year, beginning of 2026. And so where does this plan on going? Where do they want to take this? So part of the conditions and part of the reasoning and rationale for support here is the job creation that's going to flow off the back of this operation when it's fully operational. So in the application, we have a conservative figure when the mine is operating fully at approximately 200 jobs. In the interest of full disclosure, we have seen numbers and projections as high as 250. But taking the facility and the full-time employment, which is all going to come from the region, in pretty short order, is going to be significant. So the average wages are going to be over $80,000 for all of these employees. These are going to be U.S. hires. The company is too small to be able to pay for visa processes or anything like that. So the primary talent pool is going to be pulling out of the community or Coeur d'Alene or parts near to the facility itself. And so that's kind of the ramping for timeline. When it comes to, obviously that wage rate exceeds the average county wage by a pretty good margin, at least what's published in the state of Idaho. Other things will include retirement benefits, medical, dental, healthcare, the works. So the business is committed to being a partner in the community, committed to growing in the community, committed to growing locally, and once this is up and running, the job ramp up should take place in short order. But I think everyone in the room can agree, the reason why we're not sitting at 200 jobs is the company has been floating this project financially for 4 or 5 years at this point without being able to generate any revenue. And this is their sole operation at this point in time. So there are options to build in other mines, but their sole focus is on this project and on this locality and getting this facility up and running. So that's a little bit of the timeline in the background, where they stand today, where they should be going here in the near-term future. So any questions on that Taylor and I can answer?
And in the interim, our Samuel Lovely, our legal counsel, has arrived. So,
hey Sam, greetings.
Hello. Sorry, I was stuck in court. So.
So that's it. Yeah, that's the project in a nutshell. I hope I didn't tell you anything you didn't know already, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions.
Nothing new.
I don't have any.
No. Okay. Well, so maybe transferring over to the why. So when we were looking for this, or the how really, when we were looking at this, because again, this is something we've done for different clients in different counties and different industries. This is something that the Idaho statute and codes permits under section 66, 03NN, I believe.
60.
And so this has been on.
Excuse me, it's 63602NN.
Yes, 63602NN. First passed in 2008, extended in 2010, and most recently adjusted in 2017. And quite simply, it allows counties to incentivize development within the confines of their geography. And what it searches for is at least $500,000 worth of project spend in order to qualify for the exemption on the statutory face. And that, two, the second prong of the statute is that it's provided a significant economic benefit to the county itself. And then three, that the facility itself is not engaged in retail services. So this is preventing, things such as gift shops, what have you, kind of the Main Street stuff. This is targeted at larger scale developments within the state of Idaho. So within that period, right, if you apply the facts of what our client has done and what they're planning on doing, I think is even more important in the future. They've well exceeded the $500,000 worth of investment. They'll burn through another $500,000 here in several weeks. So I think that is kind of accepted as fact. The second, bringing significant economic developments and benefits to the county. That's obviously up to the commissioner's determination and everyone in this room. We think that we've built a pretty strong case of need and what they're bringing to the table, which are, I think, predominantly jobs themselves. I think that's going to be the biggest economic transformer in the community. And then, future tax payments to the state and to the county. Taylor, I didn't have just kind of the numbers off the top of my head here that were from the application itself. I think some of the projections that we had run is that these 200 new full-time jobs, so if you accept the 200 full-time jobs as being true, this will increase the annual salaries for this job base in the community to $14 million each year. Obviously, there's going to be payroll withholding taxes, remits, spending in the county, so on and so forth. So that's going to be a huge economic multiplier for the region. And additionally, in the spirit of, obviously paying your fair share of taxes into the system, not just the indirect and ancillary benefits. Over the next 14 years, the company is planning on paying $17 million in Idaho state taxes as well. So in my mind, the paramount issue here is really getting this facility up and running and showing to future investors in the project that the community is fully behind it, which will allow us to tap into other federal incentives, but also just simple financing terms, which will function better, knowing that the full support of the community is behind them. And then I think, lastly, the third prong of it, also really not up for debate. It's clearly not a retail operation. It's industrial and commercial in nature. What the statute permits you to offer, it permits up to 100% property tax exemption. So that includes real and personal for 5 years. These could be renegotiated at the end of the 5 years, but I think at this point in time, the ask is just for 5 years. Also a revision from the application here, because it was submitted back in 2024, the property tax exemption in question will be for this year coming up, and it will be based upon the last year's tax, which would be 2024, not 2023. So the company would be happy with that. We would be happy with that in terms of what's our baseline and what starts the property tax exemption for the next 5 years. And so I guess some interesting, important facts about this. One, this isn't a cash payment, so the company is not coming to the county or the city and asking for any funds directly. They're just asking for a suspension and a delay of what they will pay in the future as it relates just to property tax. Of course, none of the other tax attributes have changed. And that's just to get these first really important, volatile years off the ground and to have this mine operating. Any questions on that? I'm talking a lot here.
So the ending year for 2024, that would be your tax base start from. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So the most recent assessment that was given, what we're saying is that will be frozen in time. This isn't saying that they don't pay any property tax. They just continue to pay at the same rate that you've most recently assessed them. But for the next 5 years, as assets are placed into service, both in the real and personal elements, any future property tax abatements for just that limited window is suspended.
Okay.
If I could offer some clarification, my reading of the statute is that what it allows the county to do is to suspend increases in taxes that are related to the capital improvements done on the property, and that suspension can be done for a period of up to 5 years and for an amount of up to 100%. So you can do less than 100% and you can do less than 5 years, but it's just for the baseline can increase just based on overall increased value of the property, but it would not increase for the improvements that they're making to the property that otherwise would be assessed in that period.
Yeah. So basically right now, our taxes, what you paid in taxes last year, you would pay in taxes next year. If we allowed the 100%, if that was 100%. So we would still get the same taxes that we got this year, next year. But any new improvements that come along and are assessed and increase in value, increase in taxes, we would be forgiving up to 100%.
You would forgo it for the time period where you granted the exemption of up to 5 years. That's the statutory limit. Beyond that 5 years, then the assessment would increase based on the improvements, and the assessment would go based on that valuation.
And then you could ask for another 5 years after that, and that starting point would be the baseline. Okay.
Commissioner Grant, could you give us an idea of what improvements you'd be looking at? Say the mill, any buildings, those type of things.
Yeah, so I mean, really everything to get the mine operational. If we turn to the facilities section, which I believe is, Taylor, I don't have the numbers of the pages in front of me, but it would start on the second page.
If you go to the green
of the
sticky
narrative.
note, it'll be behind that first page.
I'll get mine. This is the application.
Yeah.
I have it. Okay, you're good.
Yeah. So it would apply both to Wardner and the Kellogg facilities. Both have different activities, processing plants, filtering plants, improvements to the mine itself. office space, all of that stuff would go into really everything that they're trying to do to make the mine operational would be considered CapEx investments that in theory will be assessed at some point in time and will result in an increased property tax liability. Most likely this will be triggered once the project is placed into service, which again is coming up at the end of this year or the beginning of 2026.
Right, and we've had
Taylor,
some
go ahead.
we've
Sorry.
had some discussion on the mill that we would not assess that until it was in production. So that the list that you supplied isn't a good list. I'm sorry. I'd like to see a list that's a little more detailed and maybe the value of those improvements also.
Okay.
So
Okay, so for how far back would you like to go for that
Well-
list?
just from the date of application, because everything else is accessible, right?
Well, in theory, so I would think that it would begin off of your baseline assessment for the most recent tax year. So the valuations that you applied for the most recent tax year, we're
Right.
simply freezing that in time, and then any future assessments would be suspended either completely or partially for the next 5 years.
Correct. But what I'd like to see is the additions.
Right. So yeah, the value of what will be placed in service
The
of what's
value
being
and the
foregone.
description.
Okay, and the description.
Description. So,
Okay.
because we have the base and the list you gave us, for the most part, is the base.
Mm-hmm.
So that is current. That's what we have, or the end of 24. So if we could get a list of improvements
Yeah.
on personal property,
Yeah,
that would give us a
absolutely.
better idea of what we're looking at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, it's not going to be an exact science because a lot of it will depend on future development, right? So anything that occurs over the next 5 years. So there will be a little bit of gray area, and
Correct.
historically there is no gray area, but going forward, when and what they actually develop on the site, it is a little bit to be determined, right? There's plans, but they won't have specific assessable values for you to attach until that action actually takes place.
But it would be factual if we had dates when it was put into production, would help. So, okay, thank you.
Of course.
Another question I had is are you going to do any projections like this will be done, we'll hire so many employees this year, we'll do this the following year? I mean, are we going to go in steps so that, the commission kind of is aware of where you're at with everything, because we're...
Yeah, so a couple of things there. That's a great point. One, this is your deal just as much as it is the company's deal. So the way that you decide to craft the final contract that they sign, I'll be honest, and I think you can read the contracts that we have in front of you and presented with other counties that we've worked with. You can put parameters in the project and into the contract for certain job milestones in order to receive the benefit. So at any point in time, you guys can choose to rescind the agreement if you so choose, or if you feel like the company falls out of compliance. One of the documents that Taylor has shared with you is an example, I believe, from Twin Falls County on how they ask for annual reporting, right? So I'll call this, business accountability. Again, it's not overly arduous for the business, but it gives the commissioners and the county a perspective of what's going on at the facility from an investment standpoint and from a hiring standpoint. Now, I would advocate for my client here, in the sense that I think you should be gentle with full-time job requirements. Again, you have 200 up to 250, and you know that they're sitting at 30 right now. Things change, right? Like, we have a huge commodities trade war occurring and possible implications between Mexico and Canada, of which the smelter is in Canada right now. So there's delays anytime you have a mass industrial project such as this. So I would be gentle in the clawbacks or any pullbacks on the job section. But you should also hold the company accountable for what you expect to see out of it. In my mind, you shouldn't give property tax abatements if you're not getting something that suits your needs as well. And I think that the jobs are really going to be the most transformative part of this project. And not just jobs in the near term, but having a functional mine for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It's going to be the long-term multiplier of that effect that I think the company is playing for, and I think the community should play for as well.
Okay. And I think we can look to you to help us out on gauging, when these projects will be completed. And I think we could give you a certain time, or you can give us a reasonable time. Because we're new at this with the mining, so we're going to have to rely on what we had in the past, and then kind of your information on where you think you'll be in a year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's two really key elements to this. One is going to be the contract, which would be the product of the next hearing, right? The open and public hearing. The conclusion of that is whether or not you guys decide that this is something that you want to award. But within the parameter of the contract, and we've also attached some examples of that from different counties, that's the four corners of the agreement, which includes a quid pro quo. You're getting this from the company in exchange for this property tax abatement for this short period of time, right? And then I would also encourage the county to put an annual compliance requirement in there as well, where you're checking in each year. 12/31, I think you guys can decide what the best date is, and you're asking questions about what does employment look like. Can you send us, we need to be respectful of personal information, but the annual payrolls, what you're remitting to the state in terms of payroll taxes, what is coming back to the county in terms of payroll taxes, what sort of fringe benefits exist to the employees who are in the community, how much have you invested this particular year, so you have some level of accountability, and you're making sure that the company, is proceeding along with what we've all talked about and what we've promised in the application.
Okay.
So I've never seen one of these revoked, but the county wants to be a team player, and I think everyone in the room wants to be a team player to make this successful. But I think and honestly believe that it needs to cut in the county's favor as well too, to be a true partnership and to be successful.
Okay.
Grant, in your experience, who generally drafts that contract, that initial contract? The
I
county?
think it'll be the gentleman to your right. It's usually the county prosecutor.
I'm just the deputy, but yes, it's going to be me.
Yeah. So yeah, it's usually that. I mean, you don't need to reinvent the wheel here. I would leverage kind of models and examples from other counties. I would say the vast majority of Idaho counties have done a project like this before and gone under this exemption before. I can think of two. Twin Falls County is not overly developed. Buell is not overly developed, although it does have a pretty large university. So it's pretty commonplace, and there should be a lot of examples out there. We're happy to take. I mean, Taylor and I are happy to take a cut and give it to you as well. If it's easier to redline off of a draft, but to be clear, we're not offering legal advice here. I am an attorney, but I'm not acting as one at this point in time. But I'm happy to facilitate the documents that allow for an expedited legal review on your behalf.
Well, if you want to take a stab at it, it's really helpful to have a template to work off of. If you have a template, happy to start with that.
Yeah.
If it's not suitable, then I may start over, but I don't see any reason why I wouldn't work from that point. So
Great.
Okay. Happy to put that together. We should have that over to you in a couple of days, certainly by next week. We can have that over to you.
Do we have any other questions or concerns? Any of the commissioner have any other questions?
Well, we don't really know how much money we're waiving here, or
You're going to be waiving the potential.
Yeah,
just
So,
potential.
yeah, there's
the future.
no cut. It's just the future.
yeah, there's no loss from the baseline.
Right.
There's just the potential unrealized increase for a time period. And, it's to encourage the investment, to support the investment. It's a judgment call whether the investment would happen anyway without the support. But yeah, it's totally within the discretion of the board to grant this in part, grant this in full, grant this for a period of years, grant this for the full period of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the
And
other.
it is really hard.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it is really hard to hammer down the number as I was mentioning, because a lot of it is dictated on future spend as well. So it's not, again, we are where we are at this date. You know what the most recently assessed bills are for all of the properties in question. The question becomes, what does the future look like, really? And, this is, everything that you said is absolutely accurate, but I would just highlight again, this is a short-term suspension, 5 years or a period shorter than that in the life of a facility like this is pretty short. I mean, they've spent almost 5 years at this point trying to get this thing in production, so the plan is certainly and intentionally to have long-term operations here where you will have the springing effect of these foregone property taxes immediately due in year 6, right? And I don't know if it'll be me or if it'll be somebody else from the company. They might come back to you and say, hey, we have these other plans and we'd like to increase this. Or that's it, right? At the end of 5 years, maybe it doesn't make sense to extend it. But all of this is just meant to kind of free up a little bit of operational cash flow in the short term so they can invest in hiring and make some of these decisions that make their finances look a little bit cleaner when they go to investors and ask for additional capital, which at least at this point in time is very important because again, they're not making any revenue at this. And in the year that I've known these guys, I've seen the production date slip 3 times in terms of when this will be operational.
Okay.
So that's a little bit about probably the urgency that I would put.
Okay. Does our treasurer have any questions?
I don't.
Any more from the assessor, commission, our prosecutor?
No?
I would just kind of like to see where do we move forward. I did read partially in the code that the next time around we need to have the taxing entities that this will affect come in. So where do we go next?
They're not required to be here, but we are required to give them notice.
Notice, okay. I see a letter from Kellogg in here that, so obviously I can't take the letter that they agree, we'll have to notice them, but, so they would just need to be noticed?
Yes.
Okay.
And I've discussed that with the board's clerk.
Okay. Okay. So what are we looking at for our next meeting?
The requirement is at least 5 days notice. So
Okay.
it kicked us off, so I will
And when-
re-add Grant. Just one moment. Sorry, it kicked us off. So
Okay. So it's, is it, we have to have this done by the 15th of June?
We were told May. Is
May.
it June?
Is it May? It's May.
I've heard May.
I believe it's
Should,
May.
should be
Okay.
May. 'Cause
Okay.
If you don't, if you deny it, it has to go on the tax rolls.
Okay, okay. So we want to get this, and what's your calendar look like? We kind of tentatively set it for the 28th, but you're out that day.
I would suggest going out as 2 weeks out.
2 weeks out?
Okay.
Okay.
So for me, the 30th or the 1st were my options, and then if we have to go after that, then I was asking for the 12th or 13th or.
I think that's getting awfully close to the
Yeah.
deadline. I would suggest the 1st. So,
Okay.
First.
1st of May.
yes.
I'm not sure if I have,
I think you're gone.
I think I am on the 1st.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not.
Can we do it? Okay.
Would the 30th work?
for me.
Okay, the 30th?
I'll be out.
I'm out the 30th. What about the day prior to that?
The 29th. That's when Dave's gone.
Well, we don't want to stop the whole project just because I'm gone. But
Okay, well, let's go ahead and do it tentative for the 28th. And this will have to be a hearing, a public hearing?
Public hearing.
Okay.
David,
Does that give you enough time,
that's a
Samuel?
Monday.
Or do you want more? Because
It's a public meeting,
public meeting.
not a hearing. It's a public meeting. I think that if I have a contract within a week, I think that I could turn it around by then. I liked the first date a little bit better.
I will try to arrange to call in.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Cindy, do you have a list of the taxing entities that you need to invite?
Not yet. Well, we'll work with Terry and yourself to get that.
Okay, are we gonna bring Grant back on, or is he?
Yeah, it seems like it sent the invite back, but oh, here we go.
All right, he's back.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
Disappeared. Timed out.
Okay. We have a date for the 28th.
Okay.
What time do you want to put it at?
Anytime works for everybody.
Whenever works for us.
Anytime.
Whenever you.
Anytime.
Anytime, 9:30?
Great.
Okay. Well, does that work for you? Are you going to be in some country that's...
I'll be in El Salvador, but I'll figure it out.
Okay. All right, so we'll set a meeting for the 28th at 9:30 a.m. If
Great.
there's no further questions, any further questions or comments?
Yeah, just so 9:30 a.m. I don't know if we touched on this, but the representatives from the business will be at this as well. So we'll probably have at least two of those folks representing the business, so they'll be available to ask or answer any questions as well at that time.
Okay.
And will
And
you
then
be
is there
back?
anything that you need from EY besides kind of a template for what the agreement would look like?
Well, I was hoping you were gonna give me a draft that's what you're asking for it to look like, and then we'll redline from there. That's what I was hoping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's fine.
that
We
works.
can do we can do a draft. And then are there any other statutory deadlines that we're running up against? I know May 15th is potentially significant in terms of when this needs to be finalized. Is that accurate?
That's the understanding. We went through all of that when you were offline, and we think we have it covered. So tentatively, yes, we're good on that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone. That's all I had. And sorry for dropping there.
All right, well, thank you.
Great.
I was just gonna say it wasn't his fault you got dropped.
Yeah, it was our fault. Okay, well, if there's nothing further, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Very nice.